Hello everybody! Thanks for tuning in to my today's live walk. It's Saturday, 1 p.m. GMT, and it's time to start our live walk from Odessa's Old Town. Today we're walking in one of the city's main squares, Cathedral or Sobornaya Square. Although it's one of the main squares in the Old Town, it's often missed by the tourists. So what's here to see? First off, a cathedral, which was the main cathedral in the city and in the south of the country in the 1800s. The monument, which the communists failed to destroy. A recently restored magnificent building, which is one of the landmarks in the city, and two local markets. One sells the works of local artists, and the other one sells souvenirs. And we're gonna see that all during our virtual live walk. Just to give you an idea where I am, in front of you, let me zoom in, is the Russov street, the main central pedestrian street in the Old Town. You've certainly seen it if you have been to the city. This is Odessa's Passage with a glass rooftop. That area over there in front of you is Odessa's main part of the Old Town, where all the main sites are. The so-called First Historical District. The road, you've just seen the blue car driving. So that road, which is today known as Transfiguration Road, in the Soviet times it was called Soviet Army Road, acts as the border of that first historical district. And Sobornaya, or Cathedral Square, where we're going to be walking today, is right on the other side of the road. This cathedral gave the name to the square. And the first site here I want to show you is this gorgeous building, which was restored last year. It's Odessa's landmark, known as the House of Russov. Russov was a very famous local merchant who lived in the city in the late 1800s. He owned a lot of property in the city, but was also a famous collector of fine arts. This whole house belonged to him. On the first floor there was a pharmacy. During the recent restorations, the pharmacy moved to the building, to that grey building, but that pharmacy still exists. It's the oldest and the most famous pharmacy in the city. On the second floor there were offices of the trading companies, and the top two floors consisted of apartments. In the Soviet times, there were apartments and communal flats, and that pharmacy on the first floor. What's gonna be in the building once the city finishes restoration works is unclear. The building has been falling apart for 15 years, and locals had little hope that the city would restore it. But then the city decided to put some effort, attracted the money from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, attracted some private investments, and restored the whole thing in less than 2 years. But they're still working on the interiors. It's a local bus stop. This is an exact replica of the old cathedral, which was the main church in the city and in the south of the country. It was destroyed by the communists in 1936. And this black statue is the second monument which was put in the Old Town, and one of the three statues that survived the Soviet period. When the Soviets took it over, they were destroying the Tsar heritage, and as part of it they were destroying the old monuments. They tried to destroy this one as well, but all the attempts failed. What they did, they brought here a tractor, put the rope around the statue, and tried moving the statue with a tractor. But it's way too heavy. It's created from granite and marble, so they failed to move it, and they let it stay. The only thing they did, they destroyed the plaque which says that this is the statue to Count Vorontsov from Grateful Citizens, and they destroyed the images of coat of arms which were on these things, but the monument survived. That sign was put back in 1990s, and this is the statue to one of Odessa's most prominent governors who governed the city for 20 years. It was his idea to build the Potomkin staircase and the boulevard next to the staircase. He made Odessa the proper city and the main port in the south. Since the city's founding, this square has become the most important place, the main place of all unofficial public gatherings. When the city was about 10 years old, they built here the first Orthodox church. In the Soviet times, it was the place where local soccer fans gathered. Odessa at that time had one of the leading soccer teams in the country. Youth gathered here before starting an evening walk of the old town, and men gathered here to play dominoes and chess. Also, there was a flower market here. The only tradition which still exists is these men who gather here to play dominoes and chess. It's just that it's about 12 o'clock and it's way too early for them. When the Soviets destroyed this church, in place of the church they put here carousels for children and a fountain. This cathedral was built in 2004, and it's an exact replica of the original cathedral. And here's a children's playground. And a place to get coffee or tea or probably mulled wine. So when the city was about 15 years old, the city's administration finished here construction of the first in the city Orthodox church, which pretty much looked like this part of the cathedral. So it was small, and the church was called after Saint Nicholas. So it was Saint Nicholas Church. Saint Nicholas is the saint of sailors. Then the city was growing, the congregation was expanding, and the church was being altered. In 1840s, they added this bell tower and the middle part to connect the two pieces. And this became a cathedral, a Transfiguration Cathedral, the main cathedral in the city and in the south. And now I'm heading towards the market where local painters sell their works. Originally the market was on the Russov street, but about like 15 years ago it was moved to the square next to the cathedral. Not that many people here today because it's the second day of the national lockdown. The rules are still unclear, and then it's not a touristy season. But that's where you can come when in Odessa to look for local art, and if you're interested in buying local paintings. This fountain was over there in place of this part of the cathedral when the cathedral was destroyed by the Soviets. It's a historical fact that the first fountain was put here on the square in 1870s when Odessa got the water supply system which brought the water from the Dniester River. And here's another view on the cathedral. And a beautiful painting of the old Odessa. That's the view on the city from the bay. This is Primorsky Boulevard without the trees and the Potemkin staircase. That's how the city looked in the second half of the 1800s. Here you can see it better. The harbor, the Potemkin staircase, and the old town on top of the cliff. This is Primorsky Boulevard. The second market, which is here, is the place where you can get souvenirs. It's right there behind the trees. Unfortunately today there are not that many vendors here because again it's not a touristy time and there's a lockdown. Just a few stalls. Usually this whole sheet is packed with vendors who sell different souvenirs. And now I want to walk towards the tower to give you a view on the cathedral from the front. This yellow building, the whole building, was built in the first half of the 1800s as a wheat storage or granary. It belonged to a Greek merchant. Later, local architects turned it into an apartment building. Today it consists of privately owned apartments and different stores on the first floor. Coffee roasters, beauty salon, wine store, beauty salons, and food stores are allowed to be open during the national lockdown, restaurants and coffee places can only work for takeaways. The cathedral had got this look by the end of the 1800s, when all alterations were finished. And the locals were saying that it was as eclectic as the city itself. So this was the first part, and you can see the doors, which originally were in use, but then when the bell tower was finished, people started entering the cathedral from the bell tower. We are now uptown. The harbor and the port are downtown. This is the highest bell tower in the city, 70 meters high, and it can be clearly seen from the harbor. In front of you are two Soviet buildings. When the cathedral was destroyed in 1930s by the Soviets, from the remaining stone they built a school. And here's the statue of Archbishop, who was instrumental in growing the congregation of this cathedral in the second half of the 1800s. His relics are kept in the basement of this cathedral. Now let me walk to the front of the tower and to the front entrance to the cathedral. Here's the main entrance to the cathedral. The second day of the national lockdown in Ukraine and in Odessa. And unfortunately, our today's walk has come to its end. I'm up for another one tomorrow at 1 p.m. GMT. And for a more in-depth explorations of the old town and to give a taste of Odessa's cuisine, join our virtual tours and an online cooking class. More info is on our front page of the website at www.odessawalks.com. Thanks for joining. Till tomorrow. Bye-bye.